Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, the familiar patterns morphing into swirling thoughts. It was midnight, and for the umpteenth time, I found myself tangled in a web of desire and confusion. Andy. My best friend's boyfriend. He was everything: a handsome, athletic guy with an infectious smile that made my heart race. But while Sophie was happily oblivious, I was spiraling deeper into my secret fixation. Some nights, it felt unbearable. I couldn't shake the feeling that I could take better care of him. I mean, Sophie had her quirks, she was carefree, but often neglectful. I craved more than just friendship. I wanted to show Andy the love he deserved. But what was I to do? Confronting this truth felt like choosing to drown in an ocean of uncertainty and guilt. That Saturday, we met for our usual picnic. The sun filtered through the leaves, creating a perfect scene, yet tension clung in the air. Andy's laughter, bright and melodic, danced around us. But my heart couldn't help but flutter at the way he leaned closer to me to share a joke. Did he know the effect he had on me? The warmth of his presence ignited a longing I struggled to hide, knowing Sophie was just an arm's length away. Later that evening, as Sophie gushed on the phone about her latest plans, I felt an ache in my chest. Why didn't she see him the way I did? Andy deserved someone who would catch every flicker of his smile and cherish it, someone who would notice when he was tired or stressed. Someone like me. My self-doubt wrestled with my desires, taking me to places I never wanted to explore alone. One rainy evening, it happened, just Andy and me at our favorite cafe. As we shared an umbrella, the world around us blurred. I could feel the warmth radiating between us, a charged silence hanging in the air like a melody yet to be said. In that moment, my heart raced with the thrill of possibility. But would I dare to shatter this delicate friendship? Could I risk everything for a man who was off limits? Back at home, I faced my reflection in the mirror. Who was I willing to become? The torment of this unacknowledged love gnawed at me. I had a choice: remain silent and watch from the sidelines as Sophie took care of Andy, or step into the light, embrace the truth of my feelings, and stake my claim. It was terrifying, but maybe it was time to take control of my heart, even if it meant risking everything. At the garden party just days later, our gazes locked across the crowd. I felt the weight of those unsaid words pressing heavily on my chest. Finally, I approached Andy, every step echoing with my heartbeat. His eyes held a hint of curiosity, or was it longing? I took a deep breath, ready to spill the secrets that had been bubbling inside me. What happened next would either free me or shatter everything I held dear. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, Sophie called out, interrupting the moment. Caught off guard, I felt a knot in my stomach. The tension dissipated, but not before Andy gave me a knowing look, one that hinted at understanding and perhaps a shared desire. As we returned to reality, the air still crackled with possibility, leaving me torn between hope and fear. In that fleeting moment, I realized my life was about to change, whether I wanted it to or not. As I lay in bed that night, the stars twinkling above, I felt a flicker of hope piercing through the fear. I didn't yet know how this story would unfold, but for the first time, I felt lighter. Ready to embrace the complexity of love and desire, I settled in for a night of sweet dreams and challenging choices, my heart open to whatever awaited me. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, the fluorescent light harsh and unforgiving. I glanced at my reflection, searching for something: confidence, perhaps, or the spark that seemed to ignite in everyone else. But all I could see was the girl who never felt quite good enough. Across town, Sophie was effortlessly captivating, her laughter echoing in every room she entered. And here I was, the quiet one, struggling to keep up with a shadow that felt too daunting to escape. That afternoon, we met at our favorite cafe. Sophie was a whirlwind, vibrant and easygoing, while I sat back, the weight of self-doubt heavy in my chest. Andy leaned closer to her, his lush laughter mingling with hers. The way his eyes lit up when he looked at her stung. I thought, how could I ever compete with that? Each laugh felt like a reminder that I was merely a spectator in the grand tapestry of their lives. My heart sank deeper with each moment they shared, weaving an intricate web of envy and longing. Later that night, I sank into my sanctuary, my bed, surrounded by crumpled pages filled with fragmented thoughts. I wrote to release the agony of feeling invisible. Why can't I be more like Sophie? I cursed my insecurities, feeling them peel away my layers, exposing vulnerabilities I desperately wanted to conceal. As I scribbled, tears blurred my vision. It felt like a futile exercise, trying to find the right words to describe the tumult inside me. Wouldn't it just be easier to fade away? On a breezy weekend, I took a walk in the park, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. As I rounded a bend, I spotted Andy and Sophie sitting together on a bench, the golden sunset wrapping them in warmth. Their intimacy was a palpable force, a spark igniting between their laughter. I felt like an intruder in their paradise, an onlooker to happiness I could never claim. An invitation flickered in Andy's gaze as I passed, just a momentary connection, but it sent my heart racing and my mind spiraling. Later that week, Andy caught me alone, our paths aligning amidst the chaos of group outings. He smiled, that genuine warmth wrapping around me like a familiar blanket. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, concern shadowing his features. I felt exposed, and it took everything in me to muster a smile. "Yeah, just thinking." A simple exchange, but in that moment, I felt the pull between confession and retreat. If I could just let one truth slip, maybe I could free myself from this prison of self-doubt. That rainy evening, with the sound of raindrops playing a melancholy tune, I stood next to Andy, our shoulders brushing. The darkness around us felt heavy with unspoken words. "I sometimes feel like I'm not enough," I whispered, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Andy's expression shifted, puzzled, yet empathetic. "That's not true, Jean. You're amazing," he replied, his voice steady and reassuring. But inside, I was wrestling with the belief that he was just being kind, trying to spare my feelings. The weight of his words, though comforting, felt like a thin veil over the truth I couldn't shake. As I lay in bed that night, the photograph above my desk caught my eye, their smiles, glowing with the warmth I craved. I felt like an outsider in my own life, wishing I possessed the confidence Sophie radiated, the allure that drew Andy in. My heart ached for something deeper, a connection that felt almost forbidden. But what would it mean to chase after a love that came tangled in loyalty and friendship? As dawn broke, something shifted inside me. I realized I couldn't keep spiraling in this cycle of self-doubt. What if Andy saw more in me than I saw in myself? Maybe it was time to step into the light, to declare my own worth before the feelings consumed me whole. With every beat of my heart, I felt a surge of determination. If I was going to face my insecurities, I needed to do it on my terms, not only for myself but for the relationships that mattered most. With a steadying breath, I stepped outside into the bright day. Whatever lay ahead, pain, joy, or the clarity of confronting my feelings, I was ready to face it. It was time to shed the shadows of self-doubt and embrace who I truly was. After all, sometimes, stepping into the light is the first step toward finding where you truly belong. Lying on my bed, I felt the familiar ache in my chest. It's funny how love can feel simultaneously exhilarating and suffocating. My thoughts spiraled, landing squarely on Andy, my best friend Sophie's boyfriend. This wasn't just a crush, it was a tempest inside of me, one that threatened to upend everything. I loved Sophie. She was like a sister, a beacon of joy. But every time Andy flashed that boyish grin or laughed with her, it twisted something deep inside me. Was it betrayal to want what was never meant to be mine? That afternoon, we gathered for a picnic under the sun, our usual trio spreading out a colorful blanket. Sophie basked in attention, sparkling with laughter that only made my insides churn. As Andy joked with her, the way he leaned in closer to whisper in her ear sent shards of longing through me. It killed me to watch. I should have been happy for them, yet all I felt was an overpowering desire and guilt for even thinking about how much I wanted to be the one making him laugh. In that innocent moment, as they fed each other berries, my heart waged war. My breath caught as I traced the delicate lines of their connection, feeling utterly invisible. Each laugh and glance they shared felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. I kept telling myself it was wrong to feel this way, the betrayal, the jealousy. And yet, the more I tried to push the feelings away, the stronger they clung to my heart. A few days later, sitting alone in a cafe, the rain poured outside, matching my mood perfectly. Guilt washed over me like the downpour. How could I ever confide in Sophie? She deserved happiness, and I was the one putting cracks in our friendship by entertaining these secret thoughts. Each flick of my gaze out the window reflected a mix of longing and resentment. I resented Andy for making me feel this way and Sophie for being blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. One day, we crossed paths in the school hallway, and time seemed to slow. We locked eyes, his warm gaze pulling at something deep inside me. I could feel my heart pounding, and for a split second, the world faded away, leaving just him and me. "Hey, Jean, you good?" he asked, that genuine concern washing over me. In that moment, I wanted to confess everything, how I felt when I was around him, how he haunted my thoughts at night. But words failed me, and instead, I forced out a weak smile. That night, as Sophie and I snuggled on the couch, the tension felt almost unbearable. We shared a bottle of wine, and I toyed with the idea of confessing everything. But every time I opened my mouth to speak, the words felt heavy, trapped by fear. What if it ruined everything? Sophie was talking about her dreams for the future with Andy, her eyes sparkling with love. I wanted to scream that only I saw the cracks in their relationship, that someone had to protect her heart. But I remained silent, burying my truth deeper. Finally, in a moment of raw desperation, I confronted Andy in the park. "Can we talk?" I urged, stepping away from Sophie's bright laughter that echoed in the distance. I felt a surge of courage fueled by the fear of losing both my friend and my sanity. "What are we doing here, Andy?" I demanded, my voice shaky but fierce. His eyes widened, questioning. I felt the tension crackle between us, raw and electrifying. Would I confess my feelings? Would I confess my jealousy? Just then, I caught a glimpse of Sophie approaching, confusion written all over her face. "Jean, what's going on?" Sophie asked, concern flooding her expression. My heart raced, caught in a tempest of emotions. This was it, the moment of truth. "It's complicated," I stammered, caught between loyalty and desire. Andy's gaze flickered between us, torn between his affection for Sophie and the unspoken tension that lay between us. Suddenly, the weight of my unconfessed feelings felt insurmountable, but I knew I had to make a choice. As I sat on a bench, watching the sunset, I realized that I couldn't continue hiding my emotions. The internal struggle had dimmed the light in my life, and it was time to reclaim it. No matter what happened next, I owed it to myself to be honest about my feelings. Whether it meant risking my friendship or facing the consequences head-on, I was ready to carve my own path, the shadows of self-doubt no longer holding sway over my life. As sunlight seeped through my curtains, I lay in bed, a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. Today felt different, charged with an electric buzz that whispered of possibilities. But as my mind wandered, the daydreams began, vivid flashes of moments I wished for but knew I could never have. Andy. His laughter, his charm, the way his eyes lit up when he was happy. The fantasies felt so real, they painted over the grey of my everyday life. In the park, as I sat on my favorite bench, my mind began to drift. I imagined Andy there with me, laying out a picnic basket filled with all our favorites. The sun was bright, laughter echoing through the breeze. He'd look at me in that way that made my heart race, maybe lean in a little too close. We'd share secrets, dreams, and our fingers would brush, igniting sparks of something electrifying. But just as quickly as I soared, guilt crashed down, his Sophie's. This isn't real. Back in the safety of my room, I opened my journal. Writing had become my refuge, a place to pour out all the emotions bubbling up inside. My pen danced across the paper as I confessed my desires, how much I yearned for Andy, how guilty I felt for even thinking it. Each stroke of the pen carried the weight of my shame. What kind of friend was I? The fantasies grew more intense, mingling with the guilt and fear, painting a picture of a love I knew I could never embrace. Sitting on this park bench, I watched the leaves dance in the wind, each one mirroring the chaos in my mind. What if? That's been my mantra for weeks now. What if I told Andy how I felt? What if Sophie found out? The thought sends shivers down my spine. My heart aches for the truth, yet fear binds it tight, a twist of loyalty and longing tangled together. The truth could shatter everything. At the cafe, it was hard not to stare. Andy was animated as he shared stories, his laughter bright and infectious, while Sophie hung on his every word. My heartbeat quickened with desire mixed with dread. With each smile exchanged between them, my heart felt like it was being crushed beyond repair. The more I sat there, the more I realized I had fallen for the one person I couldn't possess. My thoughts spiraled. Will I ever have a chance? Nights are the worst. The darkness wraps around me, and I'm left alone with my thoughts. As I lie here, the what ifs take over. What if I confess? What if Andy doesn't feel the same? The anxiety is suffocating, a heavy blanket that threatens to stifle me. My heart races at the mere thought of telling him. Would it ruin our friendship? Would Sophie hate me? In the silence, I feel like I'm being pulled apart by two opposing forces, loyalty tugging one way, desire the other. A rainy day found me at the bus stop, my mind racing. I hadn't spoken to Sophie yet about my feelings, and the weight of that secret felt like a lead balloon in my chest. The downpour around me matched the turmoil inside. Would it be so terrible if I just blurted everything out? The thought felt both liberating and terrifying. As I waited for the bus, I imagined what it would be like confessing my feelings, feeling that heavy weight lift. But the fear of losing Sophie paralyzed me. At Sophie's gathering that weekend, laughter echoed off the walls, but I felt like an outsider. I watched Andy joke with other friends, his charm evident, and I couldn't help but resent Sophie a little for being so blissfully unaware. My emotions swirled, pride in her, jealousy for what I couldn't have. Each passing moment intensified the internal struggle, and as the night wore on, I realized I was about to burst. Could I really risk it all for a chance at love? Lying on my bed, I felt an overwhelming weight pressing down on my heart. My thoughts raced like a storm, swirling around my feelings for Andy, my best friend Sophie's boyfriend. I could no longer ignore the truth that lingered just beneath the surface. What do I really want? The question echoed in my mind, merging with the memories of stolen glances and the warmth of his laughter. As I wrestled with my emotions, it became increasingly clear that this was about more than just him, it was about me. That afternoon at the cafe, I sat among friends, but my focus was solely on him. Andy was animated, his laughter infectious. Our eyes met briefly, and hope flickered within me. Could there be something more? But in the chorus of laughter, I felt like a ghost, haunting my own life, yearning to be part of something I felt I had no right to claim. Each laugh he shared with Sophie stung, a reminder of the walls I had built around my feelings. It was a cycle of hope and despair. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my window, illuminating the space where I felt so lost. I inhaled deeply, trying to shake off the lingering doubts and fears. I felt a pull toward something deeper, an awakening of desire that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Was it possible to desire someone so fiercely and still respect the boundaries of friendship? I longed for clarity, for a moment where I could look into my own heart and see the truth without the shadows of doubt clouding my vision. At a gathering that evening, the atmosphere vibrated with vibrant energy and laughter. But I felt detached, my mind swirling with thoughts. I turned to Sophie, who couldn't have been happier, her radiant smile making my heart ache with envy and love. I found the courage to open up, not just to her, but to myself. I had to embrace my feelings without letting them consume my life. I had to be honest, not just about Andy, but about my own worth, my own desires. Later, I stepped out onto the balcony, the cool night air refreshing and invigorating. I looked at the stars, each twinkling light a reminder of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. In that quiet moment, I felt a shift within me. Whether or not I ended up with Andy, what mattered most was understanding myself. I realized I deserved to be happy, regardless of which path my heart chose. The knowledge that I had the power to define my own happiness was a revelation. Liberation washed over me, knowing I could face whatever came next with strength. Stepping into the new day, I felt lighter, empowered by the clarity I had fought so hard to find. It was time to embrace my truth, to approach my friendship with Sophie and the complexity of my feelings for Andy with newfound honesty. The journey ahead held uncertainty, but I was ready to face it armed with the knowledge that understanding my heart was the key to unlocking a future filled with hope. Whether my path led me to love or self-discovery, I was determined to walk it with confidence and an open heart.